Welcome to the Diary of Discovery, the podcast where we delve deep into the human experience of healing and transformation. I'm your host, Jacky Carroll, and each week we will sit down with inspiring individuals who have embarked on their own personal journeys of healing and self-discovery. From overcoming trauma to navigating life's challenges, our guests share their raw and honest stories, offering insights, wisdom, and hope to all who tune in. So grab your favorite cup of tea, find a cozy spot, and join us as we uncover the power of resilience, courage, and the pursuit of authenticity. This is the Diary of Discovery. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm literally so excited. So for anyone who doesn't know, this lady is one of my good friends. She is the other half to the Fearless You retreats. She is a previous client. She is literally like everything in my world. And I'm so excited to have you here on the podcast with us today. So this is Zoe. Zoe, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, let everyone know who you are and where you are in the world.
Hello, thank you for a lovely introduction. Yes, I'm Zoè Carroll. I am down on the Sunshine Coast in Eastbourne on the south of England. And I am, well, a wellbeing business owner, and I exist to help other wellbeing business owners become kick-ass business owners rather than just seeing themselves as practitioners, because so often people undervalue the difference that they can make in the world. And I really want to help people to do that, and also to build community, because I really hate the idea of people doing this work on their own and holding a lot of stuff, because often people go into the wellbeing world because of the kind of caring natured people that they are, and they often work in isolation and carrying a lot of stuff for other people too. So kind of giving people a place to share the community of being in the wellbeing space.
Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. I think it's so important for anybody who helps people heal to have that space for themselves to be able to share the load that they're carrying. Because I mean, we both know from running retreats and holding space in that like intense space for a week with people, it's really a lot to hold, and to have no community or outlet or way to deal with that can be really dangerous for practitioners. So it's so special that you do that in the world. Okay, now you know as well as I do, we are here to talk about a healing journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm super excited for you to take us back to the kind of moment that started your journey of like realizing that something needed to shift, something needed to change, something, your life wasn't going to be the same anymore. So take us back to that moment and tell us what it was about, what it was for you.
Okay. So when I first was thinking about this, I initially thought that it was going to be the time in my life when my son was diagnosed with his genetic condition. So my son Charlie has a chromosomal disorder. I just think of it as a difference rather than a disorder, but he has Fragile X syndrome, and he was diagnosed on his second birthday. And in that moment, I went from being a parent to being a carer as well as a parent. And it was not an identity I was actually ready for. And I thought that that was going to kind of be the moment that impacted me. But in fairness, when I was reflecting on it, I thought actually I was just doing my job. I just kind of had to level up and go from, typical mama to like mama bear, like fighter, warrior for my son. But the moment for me that really changed the course of my life in a most drastic way was a day when I came home from work. And my husband should have been at work. He should have been on a late turn. So I was expecting to come home to an empty house. And I came home to my husband sitting in the armchair. And he said the words, "I can't do this anymore." And I didn't know what he meant. And I had to kind of stop and clarify. I was like, "Do you mean our life together, our marriage? Do you mean your job? Or do you actually mean life in general?" And he's like, "All of that, all of that. I just can't do this anymore." And I was like, right, totally out of my depth. I did the exact, I'm British, right? I made a cup of tea and was like, right, okay. And for me, it was like that realization that firstly, he had been in that much pain and I hadn't seen it. And that for me felt like and failure as a wife, as a partner, as someone who loves someone else, but also a real wake up call in the fact that we were just sleepwalking through life. We were like doing what was expected of us. We were going to work. We were bringing up our kids. We were, paying the mortgage, paying the bills, doing life. From the outside, it probably looked great. We had respectable jobs. Everything was okay. But where was the us in that? Where was the soul in that? Where were we really prioritizing and promoting what we wanted rather than those sort of societal expectations? And that for me felt like the rug was being pulled out. And for the first time ever, I felt scared because I'm not someone that does fear particularly. I always got this feeling like I'm going to be okay. Like whatever it is, we can figure it out. But suddenly I felt very afraid and I felt very on my own because I suddenly felt like my partner in crime, my life partner, my husband, suddenly wasn't on our team anymore. Like suddenly I was having to carry him and our son and our daughter as well, rather than him shouldering the load with me, and the load suddenly got much heavier. So that for me was a real kind of turning point.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can absolutely believe that. Yeah. I mean, as somebody who has had depression before, I know how easy it is to hide how you feel from the people that are closest to you and to kind of soldier on. But I've never really thought about it from the other point of view of that person who's getting that news. And it must have been really, really tough to actually hear that in that moment and feel that and hold all of that as well. As you were kind of going on that journey and that sort of happened, what did you have to kind of embrace about yourself and accept about yourself in order to kind of move forward and help Steve on that kind of journey?
I think the thing was, I'm like action hero. I go into doing. What do we need to do? Who do we need to ring? What do we need to act on? How do we keep you safe? Like what action steps can I take? And the whole time I'm doing, I'm okay. And then when it came to we had to fight to get Steve some really kind of top level inpatient psychiatric help. He went to a unit which, as military veterans, are able to go to, and it was actually when he wasn't there, and I was at home with the kids, thinking, well, how much do I tell my kids about where Dad is? What do I tell
Mm.
them about this? Um, and and for the first time I was kind of thinking, how am I, and there was like a moment where I was thinking, I think I might have to ask for help. And that woo, that was a big moment for me because I'm the action hero. I'm the person other people come to for help. So that moment of thinking, even if it's just help with pickups and drop-offs and running life, but actually to say to somebody, you know what I could do with just offloading some of this, I could do with a chat, I could do with being held up, I could do with just stopping holding everything and just put it down for a minute and look after me, like because I was so used to looking after everyone else. And what I kind of felt was like all of my effort was on the external stuff, and I actually on the inside was like a husk of a woman. There was nothing on the inside. There was no soul that was nourished. There was just an empty space where my sort of heart and soul should be. And that was a kind of, wow, who am I? Like I look after everyone else, what about me?
Oh my gosh. It's so it's so important, as we know, as well-being practitioners, like that we have to fill up ourselves on this journey. Like if we're not full, it's really, really hard to help other people. So to actually kind of notice that in that moment and think like, yeah, I need to kind of do something about this for myself so that I can help my family. Like I think that that's um it's such an incredible thing to actually be able to realize and actually be able to process and say, if I don't do this for myself, I can't actually be of use to everyone around me. So, it's not that like selfish look after yourself or any of those sorts of things. It really is like the core thing that you need to do. As you were going through that kind of process and navigating, were there moments where you thought like, I might not make this, or we might not make this, or like life might not be the same again?
There was a definite life won't be the same again, because there was a definite idea that I was questioning, were we building a life that was worth sticking around for? Because that was my doubt. My doubt was like thinking, right, Steve was prepared to walk away from all of this, whether that was to end the pain that he was in, or like to step away from the feelings and the emotions and everything that he was having. And I was thinking, I want to make a life that's worth sticking around for. And I was kind of looking around me thinking, is this a life that it's worth sticking around for all of us? Are we creating what we really, really want? Or are we creating what society expects of us, like 2.4 kids and a dog and a house and all of that stuff? I've always had a very strong sense that I'm going to be okay. I've like, I think it's a survival mechanism. Like, if there's an opportunity, I'll go for it, I'll back myself. And I felt like I could still do that, but what was I backing myself to do? Like, I sort of drifted into a career that meant I was there for the school runs and fitted around the kids' holidays and all that sort of thing, working in education. But I was hollowed out by it. The education system itself is broken, and I was kind of fighting it from the inside. So I felt like I was fighting on all fronts. And it was like, wouldn't it be nice if life felt a bit more free flowing and not like everything was a battle, and there was more joy in it? And so that's really was that moment is, yeah, I can carry on, but where's the joy in what we're doing? We were literally sleepwalking through the days, just coping. And I was like, is that it? Is that all there is? So yeah, it was a kind of realization that I really want to make some big level changes to make everyone's life better, and that it was going to be like, there's a risk in that, right? In that I might make a big change and regret it. But I was prepared to make that change. So yeah, I always thought that I would make it, but I didn't know what I would make, if that makes sense, where I'd end up.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, like that question you pose of like, you know, are we creating a life that's worth sticking around for? I think everyone can ask themselves that question and really get some good insights into, is this worth living for? Like, rather than just, as you said, like sleepwalking through life. I think that that's such a powerful way of looking at it. So yeah, I absolutely love that. When you were going through this process, and Steve was getting the help that he needed, you were asking for more help and like thinking about obviously career changes and kind of moving through all of these things. What was the biggest kind of outlook shift for you, or like belief shift for you, in how you saw life and what you thought was possible?
I think it was a kind of letting go of how much I cared about how I was perceived by society and other people. So for me, I was a kind of hard-headed scientist. I was a senior educator. I was experienced in education teaching. I got degrees, I got letters after my name and all that kind of stuff. And then there I was thinking, maybe I'm going to try being a life coach and a yoga teacher and a breathwork teacher. Thinking, how on earth does this correlate with who I was? Like, can I make this shift and still be taken seriously by people? And do I care whether I'm taken seriously by other people? And it just felt like, I don't know, like maybe like that metamorphosis, like the little caterpillar goes in and they have to become a squashy mess before they turn into the butterfly. And I really felt the squashy mess. I didn't know who I was becoming, but I was in that squashy mess stage, thinking I'm just going to be curious and explore and have fun actually finding out. Because I was like, if I get to a destination and it's not where I want to go, and I just keep moving, I'll just travel on to the next destination. So it didn't feel like I was heading for a final destination, and I still don't feel like I've reached one. I still feel like we're all on the journey. And that for me was really liberating, because it had been like a long time being in a career where there was, this is the career progression, this is the path, this is the typical way we move through it, and I didn't really want that. So yeah, it was that kind of, I'm just gonna, I kind of, it was like a step out and the net will arrive kind of moment. Like I know I need to make change. I'm just gonna try and make it happen.
Gosh, I love that. Step out and the net will arrive. It's such a good way to live. And it's such a non-scientific way to live, which is so interesting from that like massive move. Now, as I said at the beginning, obviously we've worked together, we've known each other for years, we're really good friends. So I know the shift in who you were to who you are now. But I would love for you to just like share some of that journey of like, how did this whole situation actually start to reshape you finding your purpose and the work that you do and like get you to where you are now?
Yeah, so I decided, when I thought about when I'd been at my happiest and when I'd felt the most me, and I was involved for a long time in my early 20s in sport at quite a high level. And I loved kind of part of the coaching that was really about the applied way you perceive the world and the way you thought about things and the way you thought about challenges. And so I went and looked into like coaching with no real idea what I was going to do with the coaching qualifications. I was just really, really curious about finding out about that. And I thought, I'm just going to see what happens. Maybe you can charge people money for that. I don't know. And I got really sucked into it. I started doing my coaching. I did advanced coaching. I did all kinds of different therapeutic modalities. And one of the parts of this was in relation to where Steve was with his journey, was I was finding that some of the therapeutic methods for helping people move through trauma didn't feel very kind. Like they didn't feel, they were very nice. It felt brutal was the word that he used. He'd spend like a week getting ready for a treatment. He'd go in for the treatment. It was like opening Pandora's box, and then he'd come home and it would be like a good week or so of recovering from that session, nightmares and all kinds of stuff, and then I've got to do that all again, and feeling like that was the only way, that was the only treatment option. And I just felt like that couldn't be the case. There had to be something kinder, more gentle with people when they've already been through trauma. The therapy, the recovery shouldn't be more traumatic than the events. So I went in and did lots of sort of trauma-informed coaching work. And I've always taught for years on the yoga teacher training program. I've been the anatomy specialist, and I went to see the yoga teacher training school, and I was asking them questions about the next course that I was going to be teaching on. And the lady who runs the course said to me, "Next thing we know, you'll be asking us if you can do the course." And I was like, now, would that be so ridiculous? Like, could I even do that? Could I be a yoga teacher? I don't even do that much yoga. And she's like, well, yeah, look at who you are. Look at the, what you know. So, yeah, so then I ended up becoming a yoga teacher. And I was just like, I'm all up for the journey. I'm all up for the journey. And then there was one moment just before I qualified as a yoga teacher where I had been in somebody else's qualifying teacher yoga class, and we'd done lots of chanting, and we'd really released the chant. It was an Aham Plema, which is I am divine love, and we'd chanted it 108 times, in a tent full of yoga teachers on the sand right next to the Red Sea in Egypt. And we finished the session. I was standing on the sand, and I just felt this. It felt like my whole body was vibrating, and I didn't know what was happening. And my yoga teacher came marching across the sand at me. She was like 100 yards away. She came marching over to me. She said, "I can feel you. What's going on?" She grabbed me in this big bear hug, and I just cried and shook, and she held me so tight. And I feel like that was me coming out of that pupae. Here I am on the sand. I've lost all the labels. I'm not Zoe the teacher. I'm not Zoe the scientist. I'm just Zoe the woman. And then about 2 days later, we were on quad bikes driving through the desert, and I felt this. I thought at the time I'd been hit by a bird in the chest. Something hit me in the chest as we were driving along through the desert, and I kind of looked around because I thought, I'm going to hit something, and then I realized it was just like this sense that it was like me coming back into my own body, like that emptiness suddenly like returned to me, and I had this sense in my heart that I was home, and as long as I always held on to that, I would be okay again. And I was like, woo, what an emotional journey that was, in and out the other side. So I feel like that was a real big shift in that journey of becoming.
Oh my gosh. I love that. I've heard that story before, and every time you tell it, I'm just like, oh my gosh. Like it just gives me goosebumps that like just coming back to yourself so wholly and so like quickly in a sense as well. Like that, the yoga training wasn't a massively long training. So to sort of come back to yourself like so amazingly, I think is so incredible. And then what kind of shifted? Because you obviously, as you said, like you were a senior educator in a college, you were doing a lot of teaching and like, as you said, kind of fighting the system from the inside. It felt really difficult. And now you are absolutely not in that space and not fighting that system anymore. And like, what was that shift from like where you were to like getting to where you are now? Like, how did you walk that path?
So I began coaching. I dropped my hours in the college down to 4 days a week. And on the fifth day of the week, I hired a room and I waited for coaching clients to find me. And a few did, but not enough to make it work. And then the world went into lockdown, and people couldn't come and see me in person anymore anyway. I couldn't teach yoga. And I was like, oh, okay, something's got to give. I was able to teach my students at the college online. And I was thinking, okay, so that I need to learn how to run a business and I've got time off. I'll go and see someone who can teach me about my business. And I found this lovely lady called Jacky Clark who taught me how to run a proper business in the online space. And actually a lot of that was like how to run a business, let alone in the online space. And I really turned a corner and started to see myself as a business owner rather than a practitioner or a coach or a yoga teacher. And that was a massive shift for me. That was a huge identity shift. And suddenly I felt credible. And as soon as I started to feel credible to myself, I felt like I could be seen as being credible to other people. And I handed in my notice to the college and I just decided to go all in because I felt like the whole time I'm hanging on and seeing myself as a teacher with a part-time business, I wasn't all in, and my energy was definitely not all in. So I had to give my notice and go all in. And I kind of felt like, again, because I totally believe that if we leap, the net appears, that it was going to be okay. And if it wasn't okay, I'd just get another job. Like nothing's final. Like it's okay. It's going to be okay. There's people leave jobs all the time and change direction. And so I went all in. And a big part of that was looking at my daughter, who at the time would have been sort of 15, 16, and thinking, do I want to show her that you stay in a job that's draining your life and soul because that's the right thing to do? Or do I want to show her what's possible? And that felt much more exciting, to sort of show her that actually you can back yourself and you can go all in and you can do whatever you want. You can just try it. You can do what makes your heart sing. You can hang out with people you love working with. You can choose. You've got that choice. And that level of freedom is one of my top values. And authenticity is another of my top values. And I felt like finally I was actually living them. And it was almost that when I really became aware of what my absolute personal values were, I realized I could no longer stay in education because I was not being my authentic self. I was not having the freedom that I wanted. I was not in control of my own financial destiny. I had a salary and that was it. It didn't matter how hard I worked. I couldn't change that. And so I thought I'm going to have to, going to have to walk my talk and be, do what I say that I'm, encouraging other people to do. And it was just so liberating. And I just thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was going to be really stressful. I thought I was going to be worrying about money, and it just worked out. And I think that's the energy of going all in. Is it's going to work out. You're just going to trust it. The net will appear.
Mm. I think it's so interesting. Like, as we've gone through, one of the kind of key themes that I keep hearing from you all the way through this process is all of these like identity shifts that you had to make, from mum to carer to, holding up the family, to not being the scientist and the teacher, to being the yoga teacher, to being the practitioner, to being the business owner. Like, my favorite one is to just be the woman. Like, oh my gosh, it's so good. But like, as you were going through each of those kind of like shifts, how did you, like, was there a common theme in shedding the previous identity and coming into the new identity?
I think there was definitely a conscious moving forwards. I don't think there was a conscious shifting, because it was almost like Russian dollies, like all of those previous versions of me are still in there somewhere. All of their learning, all of their experiences, all of their knowing, good, bad, and indifferent, ugly, whatever, is all in there. And I value them and I thank them for being part of the journey. So it's not like I felt like I shed them. I felt like, and I feel like now maybe I'm like a team. I've got all of the experiences from all of us, and we can kind of bring out the right performer for the right thing. It's like the teacher version of myself still comes with me when I'm presenting to big groups. The curiosity comes with me in all of those situations. The yoga teacher stands up in front of really corporate groups of people and shows them how to breathe. Like, we're all there together, and it feels like we've sort of met as equals rather than previous versions of ourselves. So it's almost like sometimes I thank previous me when I realize, like, I go to do a piece of work and I've already done it in the past, I've just forgotten. So I just thank past me for doing that. And then there's also like future me that I think is going to be at least as capable as I am now. That I can delay things because that's a future me problem. So I feel like now definitely I am the most myself I have ever been. And it's a great place to be. And I feel like sometimes I actually say it out loud, but I feel like I have to pinch myself because I get to live this life, and I get to live this life, like the life I've chosen, the life I choose, the priorities I put in. I go and see my friends on the beach and we swim, we run retreats together, we take people on amazing life-changing experiences, we enable other people to go deep, we enable other people to heal, to build businesses. Like, wow, I feel like I'm making such a contribution in the world by being myself. Like, that recognition that yes, I might not be the most knowledgeable person, but I am enough, and I am making a difference, making a contribution, and really, really enjoying myself. And I think that is the biggest thing. I was always so worried that if I let go of the expectations and just chose to be a free spirit, that it was always going to be financially difficult, or there was always going to be a compromise. And when I think about like that phrase, like not compromising, it almost feels like a kind of hard-headed business not compromising sort of way of being. But actually, I feel like now I'm not compromising on the quality of life that I have and living the life that I choose. That's what I'm not prepared to compromise on. I'm not prepared to compromise on love. I'm not prepared to compromise on joy. I'm not prepared to compromise on being the fullest expression of myself. And that feels like a beautiful place to be. And I'm really happy that I'm here now.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Before we hit record, we were talking about the kind of struggle of getting this podcast out into the world, and the kind of emotions that kind of came through for me as we were going through this. And I said to you, like, I just got to the point where I realized I just wasn't going to settle anymore. And I feel like it was a very similar concept for you. Is like you're just not going to settle for that life anymore. You're not going to settle for something that isn't extraordinary and isn't exactly what you want it to be. And I think that that is so empowering to actually sit and just say, I'm not, I'm not gonna wait for somebody else to make this happen for me, or I'm not gonna, hope and sit where I am and hope that something happens. It was like a very action focused, very like take the leap and everything will happen for you, which I think is so incredible. So, what would your advice be for somebody who has kind of just realized that they're not living the life that they want. They're not being authentic to themselves. Maybe they have a partner who's in a similar place as Steve, or, a son or daughter who's in a similar place to Charlie. Like, what would your advice be for somebody who's just going through a really tough time and is like struggling to keep their head above water at the moment?
I think it's to lean into the love that you have. So it's okay to extend that love to yourself, and to nurture yourself, to be kind to yourself, to apply that same compassion. And it's also okay to rescue yourself. Like sometimes it can feel like no one's coming for you. Like you've got to rescue yourself. And that is empowering. It can feel so frightening when you're in it and you think it's down to me. And actually it is, but that's a good thing because you get to choose the direction that you're taking. And I think that it can feel like you're on your own when you back yourself and you have to do that thing. But usually you're not. And it's finding the people who can support you. And the way you find them is by being yourself. When I think now about the people who really hold me up, they wouldn't have, if I'd have gone into those same situations with my full armor on, they wouldn't have felt like they could help me. Like I gave off this vibe like, I'm okay, I don't need any help, I'm invincible, I can do this. And actually taking the armor off, being vulnerable and saying, yeah, I could do it, but I'm really too tired right now. I could really do with somebody else holding this with me. And actually it's enabled people to help me, to come forward, and that's given them something. I always felt like that would be taking something from someone else, and actually it gives them an opportunity to help, to share, to contribute. And I felt like that for me was such a realization that asking for help was an opportunity for other people to show me that they loved me, to show me that they cared, it was a gift to them as much as it was a gift to me. And that made it a whole lot easier rather than feeling like I had to be super independent and do everything on my own. So, there are people, we're here for you, I'm here for you, just connect. You don't even have to know what you need, because that, for me, when people say, just let me know if you need anything. And the reason I found that really hard was because I didn't know what I needed. I knew I needed something, but I couldn't put into words what that was. Sometimes it was just someone to sit with me and in silence, not do anything. I just didn't want to be on my own. So sometimes it is just saying, I need something, but I don't know what. Even that's enough. And I think that sharing of the gift, because your own healing journey isn't just your own. Like when I've sat with people through their own healing, I benefit from their healing. And I think that we can often feel like our healing is our own, but I think when we all heal, the world heals. And when we witness someone else's healing, we can't help but heal further. And I think that when a whole generation of people recognize that we're going to do more together, then that's going to be really powerful. When a whole generation of people stand up together and say, together we rise, that's when we're going to make that big difference. And we're going to make healing much more visible. And I think that's what we need, because there isn't shame. There shouldn't be shame. There shouldn't be guilt. There shouldn't be anguish. There shouldn't be regret, remorse, any of that kind of stuff, because we got to that point. There should just be, love and joy that we're doing it. So I think that sharing the healing really is a gift.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is the whole reason why this podcast was born. So you know that I am 100% behind that. And I think it is so important for people to share their journeys and share you know, how hard healing can be at times, but also just how beneficial it is and the like amazing outcomes that people get at the other end of the spectrum, because it can feel really hard when you're in it to even believe what is possible at the other end. And actually, to have so many wonderful people come and share their journeys and say, but look what is possible. I think it is such a new level to kind of bring people to and give people that inspiration of actually, if I do walk this and I do deal with this and I do take this on, it's going to be okay, and we're going to kind of be able to move through this, which I think is really important. Now, as we know, for anyone who's been listening to the podcast for a little while, we always ask our guests what their next level of healing is, their next focus, the next thing, because healing is an ongoing journey and we're constantly finding parts of ourselves that we need to address and look at and release. So, what is it for you as your like next step?
I think for me, it's it's that sometimes when you do something and you don't really appreciate how amazing it is. So I think there is that continuation of the gratitude of being on the journey to keep doing all of the things that nourish me and keep me well and keep me thriving. And there's also when I was thinking about this, it's like I'm ready to level up. I'm ready to go bigger, to have more of an impact. And I think that that's like the next level of healing, is to kind of share that even wider, to spread that net wider, to help more people, to have more impact, to go bigger. And I feel like that for me is then like the next level. Because I think you're absolutely right with you know, like the podcast and everything. It is that you know, so much is possible. So much is possible. And so many people are selling themselves short. And when we make it visible, again, like the healing, like with what the amazing things that people are capable of doing, the more we see it, the more we believe that we can achieve it, the more we believe we can be it. So I think that my next level is taking things to a next big level. I've got charts on the wall of my next steps, all in brightly colored pens. It's all coming together. And I think it is that just the next level of healing is a next level of belief, I think, in that I trusted myself and it worked out okay. If I trust myself more, there might be even more to come. And I think that's the next level of healing for me, is kind of that wonder, what if, what's next, what's even possible? Let's try and know that it's okay. Whatever happens will be okay, because it's a step on the journey, and the journey is an ongoing process. So I don't like it, I can always just change course and correct and change, and that's really liberating. So yeah, going
Oh,
big.
absolutely. Oh my gosh, I love that so much. I think it's like it's so important for people to understand that regardless of how much you've healed, regardless of how far you've come, regardless of, you know, what work you've done, you will still come up against barriers. You will still come up against beliefs that make you scared, or, you know, things that you don't think are possible. And it's so important for people to understand that regardless of how successful somebody is or how successful somebody looks, they still have things that they struggle with, and they still, you know, the only difference is that they've just got more tools in their toolbox as to how they can move through these things. And, you know, it becomes easier and easier every time we do this. But I think it's so incredible to look at like where you were in that moment of, you know, is this like, are we creating a life that's even worth being around for, to where you are now, where you're thinking, how can I make this even better? Like, it's so good. How can I make this even better? Like, that is such a dramatic like shift from, you know, one to the other. Like, and I know that the journey's been tough, and I know that there's been a lot that you've gone through and you've shared so much with us. Like, what would your kind of like final thought be for people like to take away?
I think that at times when I was going through this journey, I felt a little bit self-indulgent, like if there, oh, is this all about me? Is this what I want? And all this kind of feeling like it was maybe a bit selfish. And what I've come to realize is I've taken everyone with me, and I've also made it so much better for them. I'm so much happier. So they can be, and they are. You know, our family, my marriage is better, my relationships with my kids are better. I am much more fun to be around because I'm happier. I'm much more creative. I see opportunity for them. I help them to believe in themselves. So I felt like originally when I started out, it's like, if I start changing, am I going to move away from people? And actually, I did move away from some people, but it wasn't the ones I wanted to have in my life. And that was absolutely fine. So it's almost like to trust the process, that the right people will come with you. New people will find you. Some people won't come with you, and that's okay. And to trust the process and to trust yourself, because ultimately your heart leads the way to only good places.
Oh my gosh, yay! That is such a beautiful sentiment to finish on. So thank you so much for joining us today, Zoe. I have absolutely loved having your input. And as everybody knows, there'll be contact details below so that you can get hold of Zoe. If you want to come and join us on a retreat, that'll be absolutely amazing. That'll be below as well. Like, we'll have so many ways that you can be part of this community, because that is one of the key things with healing, is being around people who can help you on the journey. So thank you so much, Zoe. It has been wonderful having you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to another inspiring episode of The Diary of Discovery. If you found value in today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and share it with your friends, family, or anyone else you think might benefit from the stories of hope and transformation. Your feedback means the absolute world to us, so please take a moment to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews help us to reach even more listeners and continue to bring this meaningful content to the world. Until next time, remember, your healing journey is valid. You are never alone, and you have the strength to get through this. Keep shining bright, and we'll see you in the next episode of The Diary of Discovery.